Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into something you use every single day, but maybe don't think about all that much: the money in your wallet. What actually gives it any value? Let's get into it.
All right, so just think about it for a second. That bill in your pocket, whether it's a dollar or a euro, it's really just a fancy piece of paper, right? It's not a ticket you can cash in for a chunk of gold somewhere. So what makes it worth anything at all? What stops it from just being, well, paper? That's the big question we're going to unpack.
To get to the bottom of that, we first have to really define what our money is. Because the system we all use today, this idea that money is basically just a promise, it's actually a pretty recent thing in the grand scheme of economic history. Okay, so here's the part that can kind of break your brain a little. Fiat money has literally zero value on its own. A $20 bill is not made of $20 worth of anything. It only has value for two reasons. One, the government says it does, and two, and this is the big one, we all believe them. The whole thing runs on trust. So this is a huge shift from how things used to work. For most of history, money was either made of something valuable, like a gold coin, or it was a piece of paper that acted like a claim check for something valuable. Fiat money just cuts that connection completely. The supply isn't limited by how much gold we can dig up, it's flexible, and it's controlled by a central bank.
And the name fiat, it totally gives the game away. It's Latin for let it be done. It's basically a command. Our money has value because an authority says, let this be money. And poof, it is. It's this wild mix of government power and just our collective agreement. But how did we get here? This didn't happen overnight. It was a really long journey with centuries of experiments and, honestly, a lot of crises. The idea of money by decree has actually popped up all through history, usually when a government was kind of backed into a corner. I mean, look at this. China was doing this way back in the 10th century, centuries before anyone else. And then you get these really creative, improvised solutions, like in colonial Canada. These weren't just some economist's theories. These were practical fixes for very real problems. When Marco Polo got to China in the 13th century, he was just blown away. He saw this massive empire running entirely on paper notes, and he figured out the secret ingredient. It wasn't what the money was made of. It was that, quote, everybody takes them readily. As long as everyone accepted it, it worked just like gold. This has to be one of my favorite stories in all of finance. So in what's now Canada, the government ran out of metal coins to pay its soldiers. Not good. So their solution? They grabbed a bunch of playing cards, cut them up, signed them, and just declared that this was now money. And guess what? It worked. The public accepted them because the government promised to pay them back with real coins later. Trust made a worthless playing card into currency. Amazing. Okay, so we've seen these little experiments throughout history. But for most of the modern era, the world's big currencies were still tied to gold. So what was the Big Bang? What was the moment that finally snapped that link and threw the entire planet into the fiat system we live in today? Well, after World War II, the global financial system was built on something called Bretton Woods. And the deal was pretty straightforward. Other countries could trade in their US dollars for gold at a fixed price. And since all the other major currencies were pegged to the dollar, the US dollar was basically the anchor chaining the entire world's money supply to a physical thing. Now, this whole system put a ton of pressure on the US to keep a massive pile of gold. So, what happens when the one country holding that anchor for the rest of the world just decides to let it go? This is it. This is the moment. On August 15th, 1971, President Nixon got on TV and basically told the world, the gold window is closed. We're not swapping your dollars for gold anymore. And with that one speech, the anchor was lifted. Suddenly, all the world's currencies were just floating. Their value wasn't tied to gold anymore, but to each other and to the trust people had in their governments. The modern fiat era was born right then and there. So, what did we get in exchange? This world of fiat money, it's a massive trade-off. It has some really powerful upsides, but it also comes with some huge, huge risks. It's kind of like a deal we've all made. The biggest pro is, without a doubt, flexibility. Central banks aren't stuck with however much gold they happen to have. They can create money when the economy needs it, like to stop a financial crisis in its tracks, or they can pull money out of the system to fight inflation. It gives them this powerful toolkit, a bunch of economic levers they can pull that you don't have when your money is tied to a shiny rock. But, and this is a huge but, here's the downside. That exact same power to create money from nothing is incredibly tempting to abuse.
There's always the pressure to just print more cash to pay off government debts. And when that happens, your money becomes worth less and less. It causes inflation that can just destroy a lifetime of savings. The entire system's stability depends on trusting our leaders to be responsible.
And this isn't some new fear. Way back in 1787, guys like George Washington were already deeply skeptical of money that wasn't backed by something real. He'd seen early paper money experiments go bad and worried they were just a recipe for chaos and corruption. So this whole debate, flexibility versus trust, it's basically as old as America itself. And this whole shift from physical things to just abstract ideas has only sped up. Today, when we say money, we're not even really talking about paper cash anymore. In fact, for a country like the United States, something like 90% of all money is just digital entries on a bank's computer. The cash we carry around, that's just the tiny, tiny tip of a massive digital iceberg.
And that brings us right up to today. Because the same digital revolution that turned our money into ones and zeros is now spitting out totally new kinds of currency. And it's forcing us, all over again, to ask those basic questions. What is money? And who or what should we trust to create it?
Right now, we're seeing two very different visions for the future starting to compete. On one side, you've got things like Bitcoin, private cryptocurrencies that ask us to put our trust in decentralized computer code. And on the other side, you have governments developing central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, which are really just a digital version of the fiat money we already have. The trust there stays right where it is, with the government. And while all the buzz is around crypto, a lot of experts think the real change is going to come from the government. They make the case that only a central bank can really provide the kind of stability and scale you need for a digital currency to actually work for an entire country. So the future might not be so radical after all, but more of a digital upgrade to the system we've already got.
Which brings us to the final and most important question. The entire history of money is really the history of trust. We went from trusting a physical object, like gold, to trusting an institution, like a government. As we move deeper into this new digital world, we have to ask, what or who are we going to trust next? Will it be an algorithm? Will it still be our governments? Or will it be something entirely new? The answer to that is going to shape everything.